me just see, how am I going to do this? I've forgotten. Srimad Bhagavatam. Where do I find this? Krishna. Okay, devotees, bear with us momentarily, please, as we get ourselves together for our next session of Bhakti Vaibhava. Now let's see. Where have I put the book? Oh, here it is. Is it? No, it's not. Just bear with me, devotees. We're working on it. Let us start with our prayers. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Presta Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarane Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadha Shivas Adi Gaura Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Vanchikalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya eva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Yeah, devotees, just continue bearing with me. I'm just getting things together here. Just about there. Okay. So devotees, yes, we are back in action with Bhakti Vaibhava, Srimad Bhagavatam. It's very exciting, actually. Such an amazing literature and such a wonderful opportunity for us to really go deep into it. So, when we finished off last time, the last chapter that we read was chapter 13 of the first canto. Now, this week, we're going to begin with chapter 14 right now. But, chapter 14, it's titled The Disappearance of Lord Krishna, and that's what it's dealing with, sort of, kind of indirectly. But the interesting thing about this chapter, or an interesting thing, is that there are not many purports, and the purports that there are not very substantial. There's quite a number of verses which have no purports, and therefore, usually we spend most of our time going through the purports and trying to bring out the different points that Srila Prabhupada makes there. But here, there's not so much. So therefore, according to our schedule, this week, we are meant to go through the whole of chapter 14 and the whole of chapter 15. Anyway, we'll look at 15 when we get there, but let's see how long it takes to get through 14. It might only be 2 nights. It might be 3 or 2.5 or something. Anyway, of course, we'll just see how it goes. But it won't take so long. So anyway, here we are. Chapter 14, the disappearance of Lord Krishna. And as usual, let's just have a look at the sections in this chapter. There's only 2. First section is from verse 1 to verse 21. And that's describing Maharaj Yudhisthira seeing all sorts of different omens, different signs that something extremely inauspicious has happened. Something like so, unbelievably inauspicious has happened, which of course is the disappearance of Lord Krishna, although most of the time he doesn't really say it out loud. So that's from verse 1 to verse 21. Then the second section is from verse 22 to verse 44, 22 to 44. And that is all about when Arjuna, Yudhisthira's there, seeing all these omens, suddenly Arjuna appears on the scene. He has just returned from Dwaraka, which is where Lord Krishna disappeared, or actually it's not exactly, but it's very close. Lord Krishna disappeared at Prabhas, and it's not far, some kilometers from Dwaraka itself. So Arjuna was well aware that Lord Krishna had disappeared. He had been there. So he basically breaks the news to Maharaj Yudhisthira. And this happened some time before. I mean, not like an hour or minutes or even a day, but some weeks before. But the thing is, in those days, they didn't have WhatsApp or even email, Gmail. They didn't even have telephones. So news did not carry quickly. But here it is, and Arjuna breaks the news from verse 22 to verse 44. So normally what we do, if you recall, we go through section by section, and when we begin a section, we read all the translations of the verses in the section. But I'm not going to do that here. I'm just going to go through, and where there's a purport, we'll have a look at the purport. But like I said, there's not so much in the way of purports, and you never know, we might get through the whole section. Let's just see. All right, so here we go. Section 1, verse 1 to verse 21, Yudhisthira sees omens of something very inauspicious. So verse 1, Sri Sutta Goswami said, Arjuna went to Dwaraka to see Lord Sri Krishna and other friends, and also to learn from the Lord of his next activities. So there's a short purport here. It's just 2 sentences, actually. Let me just read the purport. As stated in Bhagavad Gita, the Lord descended to the earth for the protection of the faithful and annihilation of the impious. So after the battle of Kurukshetra and establishment of Maharaj Yudhisthira, the mission of the Lord was complete. The Pandavas, especially Sri Arjuna, were eternal companions of the Lord, and therefore Arjuna went to Dwaraka to hear from the Lord of his next program of work. Okay, so on to verse 2. A few months passed, and Arjuna did not return. Maharaj Yudhisthira then began to observe some inauspicious omens, which were fearful in themselves. So now there is a purport here. Let's just have a look. So first of all, Srila Prabhupada makes the point that Krishna's ad infinitum, Prabhupada says, unlimited, even more than the sun. And just in his one breathing period, inhalation and exhalation, millions and billions of suns are created and annihilated. So what is his power? It's truly inconceivable. So Prabhupada goes on that on this planet, the sun is considered to be the source of all life. If there was no sun, life would cease to exist, even if there was water, enough water. But without the sun, it's extremely difficult. There'll be a great lack of vitality and health. So, and Krishna is much greater than the sun. So when the Lord is here, then, everything for peace and prosperity is there. Yeah, everything, especially religion and knowledge. They're just fully displayed because of the Lord's presence, just like there's a big flood of light when the sun is there. So Yudhisthira, then Prabhupada goes on, he observed some discrepancies, some inauspicious happenings. And in the presence of Lord Krishna, that would not be possible. It would just simply not be possible. So this made him anxious. Has something very, very terrible happened? Because so far, while the Lord was present, these things would never happen. And as Prabhupada says, he suspected the disappearance of Lord Krishna. Yeah. Otherwise, how would such bad omens be there? So verse 3, he saw that the direction of eternal time had changed. And this was very fearful. There were disruptions in the seasonal regularities. The people in general had become very greedy, angry, and deceitful. And he saw that they were adopting foul means of livelihood. It's interesting, Prabhupada, this is from the 1960s, this purport. This is from the 1960s. But Srila Prabhupada talks about climate change. Isn't that amazing? In the purport. Yeah, that when civilization becomes separated from the Lord, then you get climate change. Isn't that amazing? Just look at the last few days. It was really quite extreme. And foul means of livelihood and cheating and all these things. And then Prabhupada explains what he means by these climatic changes, that one season's atmosphere becomes manifest in another season, that rainy season comes in autumn. That's what just happened in India. It was autumn, but there was so much rain. Yeah. Or fruits and flowers fructifying out of season. Yeah. And people will do anything to make money. I mean, Prabhupada's so just deeply perceptive. It's amazing. So Prabhupada makes the point that during Yudhisthira's rule, these things were conspicuous by their absence. They just didn't happen. They just didn't happen. It was just like Satya Yuga. Because of the presence of the Lord, it was better than Satya Yuga. Yeah. So Prabhupada makes the point, interesting point, about 2/3, 3/4 of the way down the purport, that foul means of livelihood means not acting according to Varnashram. Prabhupada says, anyone who deviates from his prescribed duty and declares another's duty to be his own is following a foul and improper duty. Yeah. And greed, so much greed. Greed comes when people think that this life is all in all. So to remove all of that, we need to distribute Srimad Bhagavatam. So, okay, verse 4. All ordinary transactions and dealings became polluted with cheating, even between friends. And in familial affairs, there was always misunderstanding between fathers, mothers, and sons, between well-wishers and between brothers. Even between husband and wife, there was always strain and quarrel. It's amazing, isn't it? Maybe we've had some experience of that. So again, there's a purport of a little substance. Prabhupada talks about the defects of the conditioned souls, 4 defects, but in very interesting terms: errors, insanity, inability, and cheating. They're the same 4 defects, imperfect senses, making mistakes, and like that. But he's rephrased them. Yeah. So one of the signs is to cheat others. And it's particularly prominent in this age. Yeah. And Prabhupada makes the point that even if someone becomes the Lord, he becomes very, very prominent like that, but he's not happy. And he becomes the victim of all kinds of cheating, even with his nearest and most intimate relatives. Yeah. Between fathers and sons, husband and wife, like that, as the verse said. So yeah, there's very little harmony. It's amazing. But this can all be reduced by devotional service. And Prabhupada says, the world of hypocrisy can be cheated only by counteraction through devotional service to the Lord and nothing else. Okay, let's carry on. Verse 5. In course of time, it came to pass that people in general became accustomed to greed, anger, pride, etc. Maharaj Yudhisthira, observing all these omens, spoke to his younger brother, who in this case is Bhima. And again, there's actually a purport, but it's a very short purport. And Prabhupada makes the point that Yudhisthira was very pious. So when he started seeing these symptoms, he became perturbed because it was a sign something has happened. The situation has changed drastically. Otherwise, as we noted before, as Prabhupada said, these symptoms were unknown previously. Yeah. And he and just people were astonished to see these symptoms of degradation. So on we go, and now we come to some verses that don't have purports. Verse 6, Maharaj Yudhisthira said to his younger brother Bhima, saying, I sent Arjuna to Dwaraka to meet his friends and to learn from the personality of Godhead Krishna of his program of work. And then verse 7, since he departed, 7 months have passed, yet he has not returned. I do not know factually how things are going there. And verse 8, which does have a purport actually. Is he, with a capital H, Krishna, is he going to quit his earthly pastimes, as Devarshi Narada indicated? Has that time already arrived? So, let's briefly look at the purport. So Prabhupada makes the point Krishna has many expansions, and they're not always actually, but oftentimes they're just equally powerful, but they have different functions. And so Srila Prabhupada then gives a list of verses which describe different functions of the Lord, even for different forms of the Lord. First of all, chapter 4, verse 7, whenever and wherever there's a decline in religious practice, O descendant of Bharata, and a predominant rise of irreligion, at that time I descend myself. That's the famous chapter 4, verse 7. And then chapter 4, verse 8, to deliver the faithful, to annihilate the miscreants, and also to reestablish the principles of occupational duty. I appear in every age. That's interesting, isn't it? You notice that? In Bhagavad Gita, it says, reestablish the principles of religion. But Prabhupada gives the translation, the principles of occupational duty, because that is also dharma. It's interesting, yeah. And then a different idea about the Lord's appearance from also Bhagavad Gita, but chapter 3, verse 24. If I should cease to work, then all humanity would be misdirected. I would also be the cause of creating unwanted population, and I would thereby destroy the peace of all sentient beings. Right. Oops, yeah. And then chapter 3, verse 21. Whatever action a great man performs, common men will follow. And whatever standards he sets by exemplary acts, all the world pursues. So then Srila Prabhupada goes somewhat elaborately into these things. Different forms, Sankarshan, Vasudev, Pradyumna, etc. And they function in these forms. The Lord functions in different ways with different devotees. But as Krishna himself, he comes once in a day of Brahma, 8,640,000,000 of our years, and he performs pastimes in Prabhupada says, routine spool, the same pastimes. Same pastimes. But sometimes there are little differences in detail. So, when he appears as Krishna, all other forms are within him. That's Krishna in Vrindavan. So Prabhupada says, therefore, Krishna in Vrindavan is different from Krishna in Mathura or Krishna in Dwaraka. Little bit, somewhat. But there's difference. Yeah, there's difference. But then Prabhupada talks about the universal form also. It's different too. And Prabhupada makes the point that the universal form he exhibited on the battlefield of Kurukshetra is a material conception of his form. That's interesting. Yes. So, Prabhupada goes on that it should be understood that when Lord Krishna was apparently killed by the bow and arrow of the hunter, the Lord left his so-called material body in the material world. Yeah. So-called material body. And that's happened. He left a material body which was cremated. Yes. So, it doesn't really matter, matter or spirit, it doesn't really matter. Matter or spirit doesn't matter. Anyway, because he's Kaivalya, means liberated, free. Yeah, free. So for him there's no difference between matter and spirit. Leaving one body, taking another, doesn't mean he's like us. Yeah. So these activities, all the different activities in the different forms, they're simultaneously one and different. Yeah. So when Yudhisthira was lamenting the possibility of the Lord's disappearance, it was just in pursuance of a custom of lamenting the disappearance of a great friend. But actually the Lord never leaves his transcendental body. And Prabhupada concludes the purport, such less intelligent persons have been condemned by the Lord himself in Bhagavad Gita. And they're known as the mudhas. That the Lord left his body means that he left again his plenary portions in the respective dhams, transcendental abodes, as he left his Virat Rupa, the universal form, in the material world. And verse 9, from him only all our kingly opulence, good wives, lives, progeny, control over our subjects, victory over our enemies, and future accommodations in higher planets have become possible. All this is due to his causeless mercy on us, and nothing else actually. So again, there's a purport. Prabhupada defines material prosperity: good wife, good home, sufficient land, good children, aristocratic family relations, victory over competitors, and then through piety, going to higher planets at the end. So these facilities, of course you have to work hard, people have to work hard for them, but Prabhupada makes the point, they're not earned only by hard work or unfair means, but the grace of the Lord. Yeah. No one is successful simply by personal labor. So of course in Kali Yuga, Prabhupada explains, people think that people are successful only by personal endeavor, and the Lord has nothing to do with it. At least in so many cases, that's a fact. And Prabhupada refers to a great sannyasi of India giving speeches in Chicago protesting the benedictions of the Supreme Lord. If you don't know who that is or was, don't worry about it, okay? But you should know. Yeah. So Shastra says, ultimately, the ultimate sanction for everything is the Lord. Yes. And Yudhisthira is admitting this in regard to himself. And we should follow in his footsteps. Prabhupada says, if one could achieve success without the sanction of the Lord, then no medical practitioner would fail to cure a patient. And Prabhupada concludes the purport, therefore the conclusion is that God's sanction is the immediate cause for all happenings, good or bad. Any successful man should feel grateful to the Lord for all he's achieved. And verse 10, just see, O man with a tiger's strength, how many miseries due to celestial influences, earthly reactions and bodily pains, all very dangerous in themselves, are foreboding danger in the near future by deluding our intelligence. It's really very interesting. So again, there's a purport here. Prabhupada gives a definition of material advancement of civilization. It means advancement of the reactions of the threefold miseries due to celestial influence, earthly reactions, and bodily or mental pains. By the celestial influence of the stars, there are many calamities like heat, cold rains, or no rains, and the after effects of famine, disease, and epidemic. Yeah. These cause pain, and they're all punishments from the Lord or his superior energy of Maya. So therefore we have to take to devotional service. And the asuras, the demons, who don't believe in God, they make plans to counteract the miseries, but oftentimes those plans cause greater misery than the miseries that they were trying to solve. So Prabhupada concludes the purport. Bhagavad Gita 7:14 clearly states that the reaction of material energy is never to be conquered because of the binding effects of the three modes. They can simply be overcome by one who surrenders fully in devotion unto the lotus feet of the Lord. So now, Yudhisthira is going to mention a number of specific omens which he's observing and feeling in some cases, which are like famous inauspicious omens. And he knows very well that they indicate something disastrous has happened. So the left side of my body, my thighs, arms, and eyes are all quivering again and again. I'm having heart palpitations due to fear. All this indicates undesirable happenings. For men, if the left side of the body quivers or like that, it's inauspicious. For ladies, if the right side quivers, it's inauspicious. So Prabhupada goes on that, purport is there, material life, it's full of undesirables. Things we don't want are forced on us by some higher control. And we can't see how it's all happening under the modes. So Prabhupada mentions, when a man's left eye, arm, and thigh quiver constantly, one must know that something is going to happen which is undesirable. So these things are compared to fires. No one goes to the forest to set fire, but fires start. And they can't be extinguished by human efforts, only by the mercy of the Lord when clouds come and pour rain on these big fires. And therefore there's that famous verse, Samsara Davanala Lida Loka, Trinaya Karanya Ganaganatwam, that the spiritual master is bringing water from the clouds of mercy of the Lord to Samsara Davanala Lida, to extinguish the fire of the painful fire of material existence. So such miseries can be removed only by the mercy of the Lord, who sends his bona fide devotees to enlighten humans and save them from all calamities. So then some more verses just describing bad things, omens. 12. Just see, O Bhima, how the she-jackal cries at the rising sun and vomits fire, and how the dog barks at me fearlessly. These are bad omens. Prabhupada just mentions that. Then 13. O Bhimasena, tiger amongst men, now useful animals like cows are passing me on my left side, and lower animals like the asses are circumambulating me. My horses appear to weep upon seeing me. Yeah, if auspicious animals, particularly cows, the most auspicious animal, that just by themselves pass you on your left side, it's an inauspicious sign. But if they pass you on your right side, that's auspicious. Right, okay. Verse 14. Just see, this pigeon is like a messenger of death. The shrieks of the owls and their rival crows make my heart tremble. It appears that they want to make a void of the whole universe. What do you think? Pretty amazing, isn't it? And he's seeing all these things, and he knows exactly what they mean. The deities seem to be crying in the temple, lamenting and perspiring. Whoops, wait a minute. Sorry. Went too far. Just see how the smoke encircles the sky. It appears that the earth and mountains are throbbing. Just hear the cloudless thunder and see the bolts from the blue. With no clouds, there's thunder and lightning. This is supernatural. 16. The wind blows violently, blasting dust everywhere and creating darkness. Clouds are raining everywhere with bloody disasters. Clouds raining blood. It happens sometimes. 17. The rays of the sun are declining, and the stars appear to be fighting amongst themselves. Confused living entities appear to be ablaze and weeping. 18. Rivers, tributaries, ponds, reservoirs, and the mind are all perturbed. Butter no longer ignites fire. What is this extraordinary time? What is going to happen? 19. The calves do not suck the teats of the mothers, nor do the cows give milk. They're standing, crying, tears in their eyes, and the bulls take no pleasure in the pasturing grounds. You know, it must have been an incredible experience for him, because he knows all about these things. You know, he's highly educated in all spiritual and religious and all these types of things. So he knows, you know, and all these things are coming at one time, just like a bombardment. Yes. The deities seem to be crying in the temple, lamenting and perspiring. They seem about to leave. You know, one thing we can say is that, you know, it happens sometimes that there are deities on the altar. Even in some ISKCON temples it has happened. But somehow the deities fall off the altar or something of that sort. I mean, they fall off sometimes and get broken. And we generally take it it's a sign the worship is not being done nicely. Yeah. some years ago, in the Bhaktivedanta Manor, the little Radha Krishna deities fell off and broke. So I think they put them in the sea and they got new ones. And some years ago, several years ago, say, in Mauritius, the big Radha Krishna deities fell. Or the big Krishna fell. Radharani didn't fall. But the big Krishna fell and they had to replace him because he got too badly broken. Yeah. And so many of the devotees felt it was the temple president's fault. Because Prabhupada, one devotee asked Prabhupada, actually Badri Narayan Swami, he'd just become the temple president in some temple, maybe San Diego probably, in California. He just become temple president and then Prabhupada came to visit the temple. And Badri Narayan Maharaj, he wasn't sannyasi then, but anyway, he was just recently become the president. He wanted to get some instructions from Prabhupada. So on one morning walk, he asked Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada, what are the duties of a temple president? And Srila Prabhupada stopped, as he would often do when he wanted to make a point on a morning walk. He'd stop and put his walking stick down sort of like firmly onto the ground. And all Prabhupada said was, temple president is the person who, when anything goes wrong, it's his fault. And I remember when I got second initiation, I've told this story many times. But Prabhupada, the ceremony, the fire sacrifice was one day, and the giving of the mantras was the next day, early in the morning. So I was the first one to go in to get Gayatri mantras. And so I went and offered obeisances, and I knelt there, as I recall. And Prabhupada saw I already had my Brahmin thread on. And Prabhupada, in a stern way, he said, why have you got your Brahmin thread on? And I didn't know. And, it was the first time I'd been alone in Prabhupada's presence. And, he had such a sobering presence. And so I just didn't know what to say, and I didn't say anything. So then Prabhupada said, who put it on? And I said the name of the devotee. And Prabhupada asked, why did he put it on? And again, silence. And Prabhupada said, I wanted to put it on you. And then Prabhupada called for the temple president, who was Mukunda Maharaj now, but he was a householder at the time. And Prabhupada, there were hundreds of devotees there, because whenever Prabhupada would come, hundreds of devotees would come from all over Europe. And the temple president was so busy dealing with things. So in came Mukunda, and Prabhupada said to him, why has this boy got his Brahmin thread on? And Mukunda became stunned and couldn't say anything, didn't say anything. And Prabhupada said, you should know, you're the temple president. You should know about these things. Yeah. So he expected him to know how come I had my Brahmin thread on? Which was a pretty minor detail considering what was going on in the temple. You know, so many devotees, so many things happening. But anyway, yeah. So Prabhupada, Yudhisthira knew all these things, and Prabhupada expected the temple presidents to know what was going on in their temples. And if something bad happens to the deities, then we always take it something's wrong with the temple. You know, something really needs to be done to correct something in the temple. So anyway, yeah, so we're on verse 20. The deities seem to be crying in the temple, lamenting and perspiring. They seem about to leave. All the cities, villages, towns, gardens, mines, and hermitages are now devoid of beauty and bereft of all happiness. I do not know what sort of calamities are now awaiting us. But he knows some calamities. In fact, he's got an idea. Because, you know, it's one thing if one of these things happens to you. Then if you know the science of omens, then you should know, oh, that's significant. But it's another thing, like what Yudhisthira has been saying. If just all these so many things, bad, inauspicious things are just happening and happening and happening. So, as a sort of master of the science, he became overwhelmed with anxiety. 21. I think that all these earthly disturbances indicate some greater loss to the good fortune of the world. The world was fortunate to have been marked with the footprints of the lotus feet of the Lord. These signs indicate that this will no longer be. Yeah. So, you know, there's still a few minutes actually, but there's a change. I mean, still the same subject of the disappearance of the Lord, but like a different perspective on it, you could say. Because now Arjuna, in verse 22, the next verse, Arjuna returns from Dwaraka, where he's been in the company of the Lord. And of course, he knows all about what's been going on there. But we won't get into that. We'll wait till tomorrow night. So for the time being, Hare Krishna, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Okay, devotees, time for some Mahaprasadam.